Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Deidre Frith. I am the Director of Marketing and Culture for RealTime. I have been with the company for just shy of 6 years, and it is my pleasure to facilitate this webinar today, a fresh approach to cybersecurity awareness training. I will begin by introducing everybody on this call. I will begin with Josh Rhodes. He is our cybersecurity analyst, and he will be behind the scenes during this webinar, taking your questions. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you will submit those through your question portal on your control panel, they will go to Josh, and he will take those and send them to the correct recipient, whether it's Joshua at phishfirewall or Todd with RealTime. At the end of the webinar, we will answer all questions that are submitted. We will not stop during the webinar or presentation to answer them. So submit those as you have them, and they will be answered at the end. Thank you, Josh. Next, I would like to introduce Todd Schwartzman, tongue-tied today. He is RealTime Chief Information Security Officer and a partner. Todd has been with us for over 25 years. Well, he's not been with us. He has over 25 years of experience in the IT industry and security management field. Since his time in the military, Todd has worked with hundreds of small and mid-sized businesses to improve their operations, resilience, and cybersecurity posture. Todd has lived in Dothan and worked at RealTime since 2001. His free time is spent remodeling an old home, playing tennis, reading, and teaching his children the finer points of soccer, or real football, sorry. Todd will chime in after the presentation by phishfirewall, and he will give you more information on phishfirewall and how you can implement that in your business. So thank you, Todd. And finally, I would like to introduce Joshua Crumbaugh. He is CEO and founder of phishfirewall. Joshua has spent over 15 years in ethical hacking and began his career working for Microsoft following his college tenure. During Joshua's ethical hacking career, he came to realize that the most reliable approach to breaching sophisticated defenses was to utilize social engineering to manipulate the human element. This led him to create phishfirewall, which focuses on bolstering the human element of cyber defense and awareness. He is an internationally respected cybersecurity subject matter expert, author, and keynote speaker. Joshua, thank you so much for being here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I had to unmute myself. Am I the presenter now? There we are, okay. Okay, it's telling me that you can see my screen, so can I get some confirmation that you can from anyone?
Yep, good to go, okay. Joshua.
All right, perfect. So my name is Joshua Crumbaugh. I am the founder and CEO of phishfirewall. So today we're going to talk about a different approach or a fresh approach to security awareness training. So one of the things that I think most people realize, and if you don't, I think a lot of people are starting to realize, is that phishing and really the human element in general are the biggest problem for every single organization, and that it's something has to be done about it, because all of your other technologies can be defeated, can be bypassed simply by attacking the humans. So today I'm gonna talk a little bit about how you can better protect your organization against phishing attacks, how demographics actually impact susceptibility, things like, you know, how job functions or roles and things like that actually impact your employee susceptibility and likely to click on phishing attacks. So let's start by talking a little bit about the problem, and I'll introduce myself in just a second here, or talk a little bit more about my ethical hacking background rather. But before I get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about the problem. So in 2021, there were still 82% of the high profile breaches that you heard about in the news and things like that that were linked to the human element. It's some form of human error. And the most common form of that is falling for phishing attacks. Now, phishing attacks come in a lot of different shapes and forms. They could be trying to steal your credentials or plant malware on your computer. It could come through your email, or it could come through text message, or it could come through literally just about any communications format. But most commonly, it comes through email, and it's from somebody either opening an attachment or clicking on a link, and that's what gets the bad guys into our networks. In fact, 98% of malware still gets that makes it into our network still starts with human error and phishing attacks. So last year it cost U.S. businesses $21 billion. We've seen a significant rise in what's called business email compromise, or BEC attacks. In fact, we're seeing a 53% year-over-year increase in 2022. That actually was the most common attack that we encountered, and the most common breach that we saw. It went from ransomware, which was the top thing we were seeing in 2021, and I'm not saying ransomware stopped. It's just as bad. It's almost 100% year-over-year increase. But this year, business email compromise attacks are everywhere, and the bad guys figured out how to bypass that default multi-factor authentication that comes with Microsoft 365. And so if you didn't have a hardened system, if you hadn't gone through extra measures, you were susceptible. And so we saw just a lot of that, which in turn led to financial fraud, wire fraud attacks, and really the bad guys just getting in the middle of wire transactions. We saw one mortgage company that just had this massive problem. And when I say massive, it was a lot of their customers that brought us in to investigate it, and we looked, and or their customers had fallen for phishing attacks and sent the wrong, or responded to the wrong wire instructions or something like that. I forget the exact details, but the important thing is we saw people sending their down payment information to the wrong places and stuff like that. And so just some crazy stuff. And all of this, as if that's not bad enough, is unfortunately getting worse, because we're starting to see the bad guys use artificial intelligence and targeting us. A lot of it's really simple, stupid, not very intelligent AI yet. But we've already seen some cases where it's starting to show some intelligence. Most of this is phishing from the CEO to other employees or things like that within the organization. But we saw a Facebook attack where they were taking public records data, such as like divorce information, and actually plugging that in and sending what appeared to be password or account recovery emails from Facebook to people's or to people, but it appeared as though it was coming from their ex-spouse, and it would say, recover your account with one click, and actually linked through Facebook. So it was a very sophisticated attack. And they're starting to use breach data. So as we hear about all these breaches in the news and things like that, now they're starting to use that data in the attacks against us. So, the problem is growing. A little bit about me. I've actually helped develop college curriculum on this exact subject. I also hate that picture that the marketing team put in this this thing. But ignoring the picture, I helped write college curriculum on this subject. I worked with a number of university professors from around the world, and we talked to address this exact issue of how do we build effective cybersecurity awareness training programs. And so since then, I've gone on to develop phishfirewall and really build this out to what it is today. During my career, I started out as an ethical hacker. And so it's sort of, it takes a thief to catch a thief sort of thing, but I specialized in social engineering. And one of the things that I was really good at was getting into places that I shouldn't be, getting people to do things that they shouldn't do. I talked a bank vice president into giving me full access to a bank's facilities one time, which led to me getting into the bank vault unaccompanied. I've talked me into casino money cages on the Vegas Strip and things like that, and it was all because I understood how the human element worked, and I've taken that offensive knowledge and really used it to build out a defensive capability. We like to call it social engineering as a form of defense. So let's dig into a little bit of the fun data we found before I tell you more about the platform. So one thing that I always like to point out is that no two departments are the same. And to that regard, no two individuals are the same, but we have found a lot of trends around or between different departments. And so this is where if we had an in-person thing, I'd poll the audience, but we didn't set up for it ahead of time. But typically I'll ask, who's the most susceptible department in your organization? And most people say it's the executives. Executives make the list, but this is actually what we found and in the order we found it with our customers. So what we found is that these are the departments that seem to be the most at risk within across all of our different organizations. But what you'll see is that different departments click on different things. And so here we have sales. They are most likely to click on social media themed phishes, or phishing attacks, not phishes, but phishing attacks. And so that's because of their job and what they do for a living. So they're dealing with people, they're trying to get leads, they're trying to gain new business and drive revenue for the organization. So they're they tend to be very engaged in social media. And if you hit them on one of those platforms that they're engaged in, they're very likely to click without giving it second thought. That's your sales team. So next we found HR. HR does tend to account for a disproportionate amount of risk, mainly because they have access to a lot of sensitive information. But it does go to show we do need to be spending time educating our HR departments. But what we found HR clicks on is the traditional, typically phishing attack, but really anything business communications themed tends to work very well against HR personnel. So this might be, hey, we need you to go do X, Y, and Z, just go to the site. Or it could be something like, hey, we're doing a benefits altercation notice or even pay altercation, which is funny because HR would be the department that would likely know about these things ahead of time because they got to deal with a lot of the fallout if it happens, but they do tend to be very susceptible. Marketing, back to social media themed, developers, business communications, but we also found this subcategory with them. That's anything that'll save them time. So these are really, spear phishing attacks, but spear phishing attacks to developers that talk about, we can do this to save, 25 or write code 20 or 200% faster or whatever it is, 2 times faster, 3 times faster. Those types of things tend to work very well. You got to get in and really understand that developer though with those particular types of attacks. And then senior management, what everyone wants to know about. So yes, they made the list. And what we found with senior management that's interesting is that it tends to be ego-themed phishing attacks. So right now, I'm talking to you, doing a webinar. I do a lot of keynotes, which gave me the idea a while back. Let's start phishing the C-suite, and let's do this phish that basically says we'd like you to come be our keynote speaker. Now, I know people, most people have this, just are deathly afraid of public speaking, including the occasional person in the C-suite. Anyway, we tried this and we found that it just had astronomically high open rates, even with people that didn't, or that were afraid of public speaking because of the flattery. So apparently when phishing the C-suite, flattery will get you everywhere. So then we asked, well, how does gender impact phishing susceptibility? And this one was actually, I thought some of the cooler data that we came across. So number one is that men tend to have lower engagement. Well, let's start with I guess men tend to be initially less susceptible than women if you're not doing any security awareness training. But what we found is that men also engage less in security awareness training than women do. Women engage more. So what that happened was that women became more secure than men after around 10, I believe it was 10 months of education. And so at that point, then men were less secure because they didn't read the instructions. So that was actually interesting. So the answer is it's complicated. It's not that women or men are less or more secure. It changes over time. And so very impressed with the engagement with women. Men, we really got to up our engagement to get our numbers up. So the next thing, we looked into this, and early on we felt like there was a little bit of the old 80-20 rule happening in with phishing susceptibility, and so we actually asked our data scientists to dig into this and get us a number of what percentage of people account for what percentage of risk. And what we found was that just over 1%, 1.23% of users were accounting for 89.82% of risk in organizations that had ongoing training. If you've never done training before, your numbers are going to look a little bit different. But that 98.5%, 98.8% of people in your organization that aren't included here, they're very easy to remediate. It's that last 1.23% that is very difficult to remediate and get them to stop clicking. And so that is where your true risk reduction comes in. I flip forward too quickly. And that's because we found that if you're not getting below 1%, significantly below 1% on your monthly phish click count rates, then you're not going to see that return of investment. And that return on investment means, have I reduced the amount of phishing attacks within my organization? Or I'm sorry, not have I reduced, am I reducing the number of incidents within my organization? And so when you get below 1% significantly, your malware, your number of incidents, the adware, things like that fall through the floor and become almost non-existent within your network. So a couple core beliefs of phishfirewall. One thing we kept hearing in the industry constantly is you can't patch stupid. And it's one of the most commonly repeated phrases amongst information security people. And so what we really are adamantly against that. We don't believe that well, no, we can tell you it's not a stupidity problem. The problem is that our people tend to be not properly trained, and that if our and I guess we also task the wrong people with security awareness. We task our security people, which they do understand security the best, but they understand communications typically the least. And so our programs become convoluted, difficult to understand, and user retention and all of this sort of falls through the roof, or falls through the floor. And so we believe that that you can't patch stupid is cynical, and that we have to get rid of that language, that terminology, in order to be successful. Your people aren't stupid; they're just not properly trained. And we believe that AI is sort of the path to addressing your humans, because AI can customize everything to the individual. And that's really one of the beauties of how our product works, is that we have an AI, we call her Laura. This is her, if you look at on the right-hand side of the screen. And Laura works as the individual cybersecurity awareness coach for each and every one of your employees. She initially will send you phishing simulations. If you click, she sends you immediate, just-in-time feedback. You go to a simple landing page that, instead of being, here's 25 different ways to avoid clicking, it's just something simple. Think before you click. Or my favorite landing page just says busted. And the beauty is, because we want that to sort of really capture that emotional response, because at the moment a mistake is realized, people are uniquely susceptible to learning. And so we make sure that by the time they get back to their inbox, they have an email waiting on them from Laura. And Laura says, okay, here's the email, the fish I just sent you, and here were a few of the red flags you could have identified to help prevent you from clicking. So we've taken this from, just a knowledge, a data dump on the page, to an emotional trigger that takes them back to their email, where they can learn in the context of business, or learn in the flow of work. And it gets much better retention, much better results, and it's a much softer approach. We have gamification. Laura is very happy with you when you do good, and she gets disappointed when you click. And so the emotion, the attitude actually changes. And when you do click, she'll send you that immediate just-in-time follow-up email. That would be the equivalent of a stick, if you will, if we're talking carrots of, rewarding users when they do good, sticks, sort of telling them when they do bad. And we actually run 97% carrots to 3% sticks. We do tell your users when they are presenting risk to the organization, but our AI only does it when it absolutely has to be done. And our AI also increases and changes the type of content and the frequency at which your users get trained, based on how well they're performing, which means your good users get less training, your bad users get more training. So we perform continuous and frequent practice through phishing simulations. We will phish all of your users, or our AI continuously phishes your users. She learns what they're most likely to click on, targets them where they're most susceptible until they're no longer susceptible. And so that's how we're able to achieve better results and really condition your users against attacks that are hitting you in real time. We provide positive reinforcement at every step along the way, and we personalize everything, so that it's no longer coming from an anonymous department or something like that. It's from a personal cybersecurity coach. So here's just a quick side-by-side comparison of the market leader on the right-hand side. This is their typical results over the course of the first 6 months. And then on the left-hand side, you see phishfirewall. We're seeing sub 1% phish click rates across all of our clients. inside of just a couple of months. With that, I do want to show a little bit of content here. I do want to, give you a little bit of a disclaimer. These videos never do well over video conference, so if it's a little choppy, the audio or the video, please forgive us. It's the webinar software, not the content. So here it is.
Well, your account has been hacked. Somebody guessed your password.
Well, how did they know? I picked something so random.
Was it dolphin?
I'm gonna take this. Hello?
So there's an example. If I could not.
Laura here.
So there's an example of one type of video, and then the next one I want to show you is Laura. So Laura will talk to your users also, just talking about real life hacking stories. For the most part, she's sharing my stories from all of my ethical hacking adventures over time, and there are some great stories. And so these stories have been used to really anchor each one of these security awareness lessons and help make it more relatable. So with that, here's a quick example of us talking about pretexting.
Laura here with a funny story about how I got access to all the computers at a major law firm's network. I researched their partners and found one I thought was tech savvy. Then I called their help desk and I pretended to be her. I complained that I couldn't install something because I needed admin rights and I asked for help. Well, her help desk employee gave me her credentials, which happened to give me access to their entire network. I was able to do this in under 5 minutes. This is a true story of pretexting. Pretexting is when the bad guys pretend to be someone they're not. A good rule to live by is to trust, but verify. In other words, don't just take someone's word for it. Till next time, be sure, be secure.
So that's an example of that
Laura
type
here.
of content. Finally, I guess we're at time, so I don't have time to go through as much of the analytics as I'd like. But maybe when we get to the Q&A portion, we can do that. But we do show you your progress. One of the really cool things about our analytics portal is that we give you macro level analytics. And you get this very deep insight into your company, but then you can deep dive into the micro, which so we give you this trend analysis. What departments, what locations are most susceptible, and so you can very quickly spot and identify problems and work with leadership of those departments to help them encourage better engagement. Because what we found is across the board, across every last one of our companies, the most engaged departments on education simply fall for the least amount of phishing attacks. So education is super important, and so yeah, with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for just half a second, and I guess hand it over to Todd to talk a little bit about the promotion. And I believe we're coming back for Q&A at the end, right?
That is correct, Joshua, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was great. And we will definitely want to go back because I'd like to show everybody like what it looks like, how they can keep score with their educational journey, because that's really where phishfirewalls is different from almost every other training platform. a lot of them it's hard to tell. Well, are we making progress? Because I can't tell. Yours makes it easy to tell, especially over time. So I appreciate that. So on the promo, what we're talking about here is we want to cap off Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which was the whole month of October. You saw a bunch of stuff from us and probably hundreds of other people come through social media, emails, whatever. So we partnered with Joshua and his team over at phishfirewall. Let me back up. I met these guys last month at a conference in Montgomery and took a look at what they were doing, and it's a very unique approach to security awareness training. It's engaging. There's short videos that have, so far, what I've seen, the best content of all the other providers out there. And then just getting with the program's a lot simpler, and it's easier to manage. Like, the biggest cost on these things for a business is the time spent dealing with it. And phishfirewall takes a lot of that out of the mix. So yeah, we wanted to get with them and offer this to all of our customers, even the ones that aren't on the webinar. We're going to offer it out there for the end of the year anyway, so they can show, they'll see some good progress just in a couple months of engaging with this training. So that was the main thing I had, Deidre. If there was something else you wanted to add, I just wanted to talk about why we were doing this. And it was just a great opportunity that, you know, coincided with Security Awareness Month. I think Deidre's coming on, I hope. Maybe she's taking a nap. So,
I am
oh,
not
okay.
taking a nap.
Okay. Hey, do you want Joshua to show what kind of information people will be seeing as they engage with the process?
Yes, absolutely. And during this time, if you both would like to answer questions that Josh has put in your question panel, feel free to do that as well. We have 28 minutes, so you have plenty of time.
Yeah, why don't you do the preview, Joshua? I think you're muted. You are muted.
Okay. I think when the host mutes you, you can't unmute yourself apparently after that. All right. Let me go ahead and show. Can you see my screen? Okay, cool. So yeah, let's show you a little bit of the portal here, because you know, this is one of my favorite parts. This is where you can really track your data over time. So you know, here's just, you know, what's my fish click count. We like to start with a few basic metrics. How many clicks have I had over what period of time? And so we show you that data. Then we show you, well, what's my, what does that make my fish click rate overall for the entire organization? The next thing is track your, you know, sort of running breach risk, as we call it. So just because 1% of your organization may click, or whatever that number happens to be, it doesn't mean that you only have a 1% likelihood of having a breach. There's this phrase that hackers say all the time: it only takes one click, and it's true. So this is your sort of weighted risk. We look at your performance since the beginning of time and take that into consideration. And so this is just really a metric that I tell my clients, it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that this is continuously trending down. And so you want to see this number just get as low as possible, and it's a great number to track month to month. Same thing on security awareness. So now we actually assign a letter grade to each and every one of your users if they engage in the educational training. And as we get that information, we assign the letter grade. That letter grade creates you know, individual letter grade creates an overall grade for your organization. So here we see that they're at a 72%, a C, which, you know, maybe not the greatest, but when you start out at a 42% or something like that, that's actually a really great improvement. And so this is how you really measure that culture shift and that you're getting that continuous improvement over time. And then we got a few other metrics like engagement. everything's color coded. So here we use an example of somebody that had a little bit lower of an engagement rate. And this example, the customer that we're sort of using as, or basing this example on rather, they had a ransomware attack prior to signing on with our technology. So people were scared to click. But everything's color coded. So if we have something that we want to see be a little bit higher like this, we talk to you. First of all, we color code it. So when you log in, it's going to be yellow or red. That means something's, we need to work on something here. And then your customer success manager is going to work with you to, help improve those, give you guidance on what to do and tips on how to succeed. So we really do provide you with a lot of information. And then finally, what are we doing? So here's your total number of, how many educational emails we've sent to your organization. So you can track those numbers over time. With that, let's jump over here. This is probably my favorite page, but let's start with this. This is where you go to see your progress over time. And you can see here that in month 1, we're seeing a 15.6% phish click rate in this example. And by the way, this is based on an actual client. That's the reason that you see some stuff and you see some real life spikes, because in the real world, across all your clients, graphs trend downwards, but with individuals, you're gonna see the occasional spike. And so that's what we talk about here. We start out at month 1 at 15%, and yes, by month 2, we drop down to 4.3%. But by month 3, we're back up to 7.5%. Why? Well, we're still identifying your risk in different categories of different types of attacks. And even within those categories, there's subcategories. So just because maybe you're susceptible to social media themed phishing attacks doesn't mean that you're going to fall for all of them. So let's say you don't use TikTok. If you get a TikTok phish, you're not going to fall for it. But if you use Instagram and you get an Instagram phish, you're way more likely to fall for it. Or in the business world, LinkedIn, and sometimes Facebook as well. And then finally, you see that by the end of the month 4, they are at a 0.18%. Now, we give you benchmarks so you can see where the average company is in relation to where you're at as you proceed. And then over here, you can see all of your users. So we're going to assign a high, medium, and low risk ranking to each and every one of your employees every single month. And so now you can go in here and see, okay, who are my high and medium risk users? Be careful how you use that data because we do not want to create a punitive culture. We really work hard to create a positive experience and a positive culture, which helps to drive that cybersecurity shift, if you will, to being more security aware. So that's what this looks like, and you'll notice it's always trending downward over time, just significant reduction in risk, and by month 6, we're almost always below 1%. So that's that. And then the next part is your analytics. So now we're going to tell you or show you what departments of mine are the most engaged, what locations are the most engaged, or I'm sorry, not engaged. Right now we're talking about susceptibility, are the most susceptible, and what locations are the most susceptible. We don't just stop and go there. We take it a little bit further, because the next thing we're going to look at is what departments are susceptible to what types of attacks. And so this is where you get that trend analysis, because no 2 departments are the same. Also, our AI uses this to customize the experience for your users to make it more pertinent to them. And the thing is the better our AI gets at phishing you, the more the better we're able to prepare your users. So we're always trying to get better at tricking them, because when they fall for a phishing attack, that makes them 70% less likely to fall for a real world phishing attack. So we don't see it as a bad thing when they click on one of ours. We don't want you to see it as a bad thing. That is creating a human virus definition and making them less likely to fall for those same attacks in the future. So the next thing is educational analytics. Here's where you can dive a little deeper into your education, and you can see things like who are my most and who are my least engaged departments and locations. And then finally, no to depart, or as we give you all this data, let's say you have 50 or 100 risk users, and we want to make it so that you can quickly sort through them and just to differentiate between who maybe had a bad day and who is a chronic clicker. And so in here, you'll quickly see, you know, not ranged by risk, you'll see your current risk, but by overall risk, who is sitting and where. And so, you know, and here we've got Mitzi, who is moderate risk, but has a phish click count of 6. And so prioritized right at the very top. And then we actually map out that risk to your different departments and locations within your organization. Finally, because I know we don't have time for everything, we have user report cards. Oh, it's apparently, I had somebody, our marketing team, throw this together special for today, and apparently we've got something unlinked. So with that, I'll stop the demo right here and open it up for questions. A few other things we have in here, though, just to sort of talk through them. Under user data, you can get individual report cards, and then we also have a detailed activity feed. So all of your raw data come in the logs, every email we've sent, every click we've gotten, every open, every attachment, everything. So you get all of that in a easy to find location. So any questions?
Joshua, it looks like there are several questions. If you would like to answer those.
All right, we'll kick this one off to Joshua here. Do you only provide services for larger firms? The listings on your website starts with companies from 250 to 500 users.
That's a good question. So under 250 users, we work with MSPs like RealTime IT. So we do provide it, but we provide it through partners. So I encourage you to reach out to RealTime IT or yourselves, well, not whoever over there to get set up.
Hey, Todd.
Wait, that way.
It's that way. It's reversed. This question came in specifically for Todd. Can you give us some recent examples of phishing?
Ah, wow.
Oh.
I just have to go in my inbox and just look. So I'm jaded now. I just assume everything's phishing until proven otherwise. But let me see here. I got one right here. Let me see if I can share my screen. How do I share my screen? I don't even know.
I will help you out with that one moment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing that control like I saw it yesterday. Okay, there we go. Let me see here. I got it. There it is, right here. You see this? This one actually came in yesterday. And just, Joshua, I know these never happen and nobody ever gets these emails that ask them to confirm their password, but I mean, yeah, it's funny. I'm going to actually send something out to as many people as possible this week. If you get an email that's asking you for your password or confirm your credential, or hey, just open this link and then enter your password, just know. I mean, you're not going to miss anything, I promise. So any words? Yeah, please expand on that, Joshua, because these guys are pretty slick with these things.
So one thing I'll add, this is the most common type of phish we're seeing right now. What we're seeing though is that they're in these business email compromise, let's say they compromise one of your accounts, they'll use a long email chain that you have going back and forth between somebody in your organization, outside your organization. It doesn't really matter. They don't care. They're just looking for a long email chain. They take that, they forward it over to a separate compromised email account, and they start using that email chain. They add their phish to the top and with a bunch of space in between. So you'll see something like this at the top, And then the big key is that if you can scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's just a bunch of white space, and then at the bottom, it's that long email chain. Why do they do that? Because the email chain lets them sail through all of your security, your you know, anti-phishing protections that are you know, moderately effective. They're only, you know, the really good ones are getting 98.5 to at best 99% of the phishing attacks they're blocking, which means you're still getting 1 to 1.5% that are getting through, and that's how they're getting through. So that's one of the big indicators that we're seeing. This is a very common one. Typically behind this, they've got a website that has a reverse proxy. And what that means is that as you type in your credentials, those credentials will be forwarded on to Office 365. They'll then take Office 365's response, forward that to you, and you'll type in your one-time passcode. That'll be forwarded to Office 365, which in turn then sends the what's called a session cookie. It's just a token that can be used to log into the website in lieu of your username and password. As soon as the attackers have that, they take that token and they are now in your account. They begin setting up rules to automatically move mail around, unread, read things that they get into. But yeah, and then they just sit there and they lurk. And they wait for anything about money, and when you start talking money, they're going to get in the middle and try and intercept that payment. So that's the most typical of what that looks like. But we see just the gauntlet of different types of attacks. I'm seeing a lot of social media themed stuff, and a lot on social media. These platforms are being used to phish your users, and during election season, typically more than ever. And we expect that to be really bad this year because we have the Ukraine conflict that really is instigating and fanning the flame with Russia. So we expect Russia to just be their attacks to be at an all-time high. And that, you know, coincidentally, China's attacks are already at an all-time high too. So, you know, it's a very real threat. They're targeting us. They're hitting us right now. And they're after the small businesses because the larger ones are harder to get through. They're more likely to get detected. And as they detect within the big companies, they're sharing intelligence. So they're going to take that data and help shut down these connections inside of their other organizations. And the small companies, there's no threat intelligence sharing. There's, you know, very little detection, and they have connections into the big companies. And so that's why the attackers want to target small business.
Yeah, and you made a very good point about the effectiveness of email security products. Like 98% sounds awesome, except for I don't know how many emails the average person gets a day. I get a few hundred, so 2% of a few hundred is a lot of potential phishing emails. And what Joshua is talking about a little bit, part of the ineffectiveness, you know, when those security protections fail is they only look so far down the chain. You know, if you can bury something just a couple layers deep, the security tools don't see it. And then you're the firewall at that point. You've got to be able to detect it. And you've got to say, hey, that doesn't look right. Let me ask Joshua. Let me ask Josh, you know, and see, is this something I should be clicking or not? You know, between Josh and I bet we get a couple dozen, you know, queries like that a week. Hey, what do you think about this? I'm so glad people ask, and we have to encourage people to ask, because if you're asking, that means you're paying attention, which is our goal with why Joshua is here on this call with us. We want to bring you up and improve your human firewall capabilities.
Joshua, we have a question from an attendee regarding the slide, if the slide deck will be shared. This webinar is recorded, so post webinar, we will email this out to everyone. But I did want to ask you directly if a slide deck is something you're able to share.
Happy to share it.
Okay.
And I think that demo you were using, that's on the website, isn't it, Joshua?
A version,
Okay.
we're updating it, so you got a little bit of a preview to the new, better demo that we're about to add to the website.
Nice.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
so I will include that in the final post email with the webinar. It will also include a link where you can fill out the form to get your free Phish firewall through the end of 2022. And I know that's why you are on this webinar, is for the free through the end of the year. Todd, did you want to expand on the giveaway for 2023?
Yeah. So whoever signs up for the trial, and if everybody signs up, we'll be so happy, because just in a couple months, you're materially going to reduce the risk you're going to fall victim to one of these social engineering or phishing type attacks. So of all the trial participants, we're going to track their engagement rate. Ironically, this is one of the unique features of phishfirewall. Other platforms, you can't even tell if anybody's looking at it half the time. So whoever's got the highest rate of engagement is going to get 2023 training for free as well. So
That's amazing.
Sign up, get people engaged, run contests among yourselves, whatever it takes to get people to take it seriously and learn. You're already doing other types of training for OSHA, HIPAA, your regulatory compliance stuff. And while you're doing that to maybe be safer, to operate more securely, to meet some compliance objectives, this phishing and the various cyber threats, they're the ones that cost businesses real money. So take this as seriously as you do all the other corporate training you do, and you can really reduce the chances you're going to call somebody like Joshua and say, hey, something bad happened. What do I do now? So we want to just keep that from being a possibility in your world.
Great. So be on the lookout for the email. We have 8 minutes left. Is there anything else either of you gentlemen would like to add?
No, good, Joshua?
yeah,
All right.
I'm good.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you. Hey, I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
everybody's
Joshua,
time.
so much. Thank you so much for being with us. Todd, thank you as well. Josh, for facilitating behind the scenes. We appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that joined us for this webinar, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.